Hi, what's up? As I promised, I will be talking about shifts of the aggregate demand curve in the next video. So here we are today. Now, there's one thing that I usually tell students whenever I'm taking a class on shifts and whatever it is. Whatever is going to shift a curve is neither what is on the horizontal axis of that particular graph, nor what's on the vertical axis of the graph. So on the aggregate demand curve, recall that let me just draw. Okay, we established from the previous class that we have a downward sloping aggregate demand curve. Okay, 0, y, and then here we have the price level. So whatever is going to make this curve shift obviously is not the price level and it's not the out, because if outputs were changing, that means there's going to be a movement along this curve, and that would also reflect in the overall price level. And if the overall price level were rising or falling, it's also reflecting in what the output is going to be. So P will be rising, Y will be falling, something like that. And all of those are still movements along the aggregate demand curve. So what we want to look at in this particular video is to check the effect of an expansionary fiscal policy as well as an expansionary monetary policy on the aggregate demand curve. So how is that going to shift this? Now recall that if you've not known it before, if you've known it already, expansionary fiscal policy is talking about how governments boost economic activity by lowering taxes or increasing its spending, that is government spending, or doing both at the same time. All right. While talking about expansionary monetary policy, is talking about how the government through the central bank and the Federal Reserve Bank controls the money supply in the economy through, let's say, open markets purchase, okay, where it buys bonds and other government securities from the public and then pays them money. So that takes money, that puts money in the economy that way. It could be that, it could be through lowering of the discount rate, it could be through lowering of the reserve, the bank reserve rates, and because banks are required to keep reserves, so when you lower the rate on bank reserves, that also pushes money into the economy. Anyway, that's not where we are going. So we are in the simple sense of it, we are just going to be looking at the effect of an increase in government spending as well as the effect of an increase in money supply on the aggregate demand curve. So what is essentially going to happen? So now let's start with effect of an increase in government spending. So assume that the economy were in the recessionary period, or a period where the economy isn't booming and the government wants the economy to come alive, to become active, okay, or to become more productive. Okay, so the government then increases its spending and it keeps its tax rates constant, okay, and it can do both, but here we are just assuming that it only increases its government spending. Although know that an increase in government spending today that eventually puts money in your pocket is going to lead to an increase in government borrowing, okay, because since the government is not raising tax revenues today and it has to spend more than it actually has in its coffers, so that simply means that the money that the government wants to use to do that has to come from somewhere, and majority of government revenues from taxes. Okay, so if money is not coming from taxes, money has to come from somewhere, and usually it's from borrowing. All right, which means that the public is still going to bear the brunt in the future. But that's not the story of this particular day. So I just said that so that when your government is borrowing, the government of your country is borrowing in order to make the country better. Just make sure that the government is, or monitor what is going on, and the government is actually putting these monies into productive activities that will be revenue generating on their own. So by the time the government needs to pay back the loan as well as the interest on the loan, so this whatever it is that the government has spent money on will be able to pay for those things themselves. But if you have government officials that embezzle funds, that's just more tribulation for the economy in the future. But like I said, that's a story for another day. Thank God that you're studying economics. So an increase in government spending. Now, when government is increasing its spending, it's not like what's happened at Obi Kubana's party last weekend, where a lot of people were throwing money in the air, celebrating and all of that. So that's not what happens usually, and it's not as if government goes in vans and vehicles and then start to spray money on people on the streets, start to pour money into their people, start to pick, So what government actually does is to kind of engage in activities, okay, or pay for activities that require the services of firms. okay, and people. Now, what I'm trying to say is, if the government wants to increase spending, it might decide to start to renovate, is it renovate roads or maintain roads, start to spend on road maintenance or road repair or construct new roads, new bridges, okay, or the government erect other structures, let's say, or the government starts to invest maybe energy or something, an alternative source of energy, or or the government starts to erect schools, stuffs like that. So all of these things, of course, human firms are the ones that will take advantage of this, because firms are the ones that provide these services. So let's say the government is spending on the construction of roads now, so there are firms that are going to bid for that, okay, and then the money goes into firms, and they are the ones that maintain these roads and whatever it is like that. So when there is an increase in government spending, people benefit, and firms benefit a significant part of it. People benefit directly or indirectly, okay, and firms also take a chunk of it because they have to provide services. Now, so an increase in government spending indirectly is going to result into an increase in firms investments, okay, or an increase in investment. So firms are going to like push more push more output. Now, if firms had inventory before, so that means there's going to be a reduction in the stock of inventory. And if firms don't even have inventory before, that means they are going to have to employ people, okay, so they employ people, and they push when they employ people, firms make money. Households, because households are the ones that are being employed, whether men or women, as long as they're in the labor force, and they are willing to take this job. So the money gets into the hands of firms, and from there firms employ members of the employees from the labor force, or laborers that had been with firms before that were underproducing, then firms engages more of them. Or anyhow, what eventually happens is that firms are going to bring in they are going to employ more people, and employing more people simply means that, of course, these people are going to receive wages and salaries and all of that. So that is going to also translate into an increase in household income. So an increase in household income has effects on money demand. Do you understand? So, and so on and so forth. But let's just look at what directly happens, and from there, household income, consumption is also going to increase. Okay, household consumption is going to increase, and so on and so forth. So that's a side of the story. Now, where do you find government spending in the ISLM relation? So I wrote that in the other class. So you have IS relation. IS relation is C, and the function of Y minus T, that is disposable income. Okay, it could be expanded to include the interest rates, plus I as a function of interest rates and output itself, sales, and plus G. Okay, and if you look at the LM relation, I was saying it in the last class, I was using this stuff a lot. LM relation, you have money demand. So you have real money demand is a function of is proportional to output, and a function of the interest rate, if I'm not wrong. Okay, so that's what we have. So we find government spending in the IS relation. That is, we find the impact of that is going to be felt in the goods market, because that's where you have it. Now, so that means that I shouldn't spend too much time on this. So we have Y0, then we have, so what we have here is aggregate expenditure. So we have this, where Y equals AE, and then we have this guy, where you just have AE equals C plus I plus G, and then we have this guy now. So where AE equals AE equals C plus I plus there is an increase in G, which is eventually increasing this AE. Now, if you look at it, the old equilibrium was here. So what you have initially here is the autonomous spending, if I'm right. Then that increases to this, because G is an autonomous component of the aggregate expenditure function. If you don't understand these things, we've done classes on them already. Okay, where we talk about these things simply. So we have here, so you have point A, where there's this output 1. Then we have point B, where there's output 2. So this increases to this. Now, the impact of this on the is going to influence the IS curve. So recall that it wasn't what you have here for the IS curve is interest rates output. So as this interest rates there, you have I1, you have this output, but it was not interest rate that changed, it was government spending that changed, that's making us to have a better output. So which means that this is what we have. Okay, so we're having Y2 here simply because something else besides interest rate was what changed. So this is the first, what's this? You're wondering too, right? So this is the first IS curve, and then this is the second IS curve. So from here we can see that there is an outward shift of the IS curve. So that's, so you can just keep following, and which is normal from what I have explained, how government spending indirectly affects, indirectly causes an increase in the output by firms, and how that also influences consumption. And then so you have this shift is not just a big one, so it's gradual. This shift is gradual. So you have something like this, you have something like this, and on and on and on like that. So AE moves gradually upwards until it restores to a new equilibrium, according to how big the multiplier effect is. Okay, which was what I also explained in those classes. But yeah, so let's just this is the initial stuff, and this is the final push where multiplier effect is already 0, and that gives us Y. So just note here to that Y increases from something in between here before it gets to Y2, maybe Y1, Y1.1, 1.2, 1.3 until it gets to Y2, whatever. So from here we then go to the equilibrium between the goods markets, and the money market. Okay, so we have 0, we have Y, we have the interest rate. So there is an equilibrium interest rate here where the IS curve, initial IS curve, which is IS1, was equal to the initial LM curve. Okay, and then there was an output here, Y1. So of course, the output here shouldn't be the same as the output here when there was, a shift. But here we are just trying to make things easy. Okay, just make things easy to understand. If it were, if you had mathematical functions, I'll just talk about real life situations. So the big shift that occurs here is now having something else to deal with, which is the money market. So we expect that output is going to be different from what is here, but we are just trying to make stuff easier for ourselves. Okay, so we have this. So an increase in the IS curve simply means we have something like this. So we have, this is IS2, okay, IS2, and which is occurring at a higher interest rate. Okay, so let me call this I2, call this I1, higher interest rate, and then we have a higher output. Okay, now what we need to understand here is that, I already explained how an increase in government spending first raises output on, by engaging the services of firms and households directly or indirectly. So the increase in interest rate here, okay, would also reduce investment. Investment is a function of interest rate, is a function of Y output as well. Okay, so when interest rate increases, there's going to be a crowding out because the money that is now available for firms, okay, to borrow, to invest, as now the cost of it has now gone up. Okay, so now, and because the money supply didn't change, we are taking money from the same pool. Government taking more of the money simply means that what is available for firms is now less than what would be otherwise obtained. So that simply means that there is an aspect of investment that should have occurred that would not be occurring now simply because the cost of borrowing has increased. All right. So there was one thing that if you look at it, at this interest rate, for example, which you're also assuming to be the equal interest rate here, this is what we're meant to have. I have this other marker that's meant to be writing in blue, but I don't know why it is still living a fake life. So if you look at it, this is the kind of, so this is actually, let me extend this. So this is actually Y2. Okay, this is actually Y. So we expect output to jump from Y1 to Y2, which was meant to be the total change. But because interest rate has risen and it has reduced investment, so we have Y1 increasing just to Y2. Okay, increasing to, let me call this Y3, increasing to Y3. Okay, so what we should have had initially was this, but part of investment has been crowded out by government spending, so that is reducing the extent to which output is eventually increasing. Okay, so that is the drama that plays out in this particular in this particular in the goods and money markets. Okay, and what else do I have to show? So now, if you look at it, an increase in government spend, that is an expansionary fiscal policy, is raising interest rates and it is increasing output. Now let us come back to the aggregate demand curve. So if you look at it, aggregate demand curve. So here was the Y, here was the Y1 as taken from the goods and money market. Now there's something I didn't mention in the last video that I should mention in this video, which is the fact that every point on the aggregate demand curve is an equilibrium point in the goods and money market. So it's talking, every point here is talking about goods and money market equilibrium. Okay, so this Y1 here is the intersection between demand and between the LM and the IS, which is what is giving us the I1 here. Okay, and the Y1 here. Now the same thing as the Y2. The Y2 is the Y3 now. Okay, let me call this Y3. So this guy, or to make things easy, should I just say Y1 to Y3? So let me just say this is increasing from Y1 to Y3. This is increasing from Y1 to Y3. Okay, so this is increasing from Y1 to Y3. But then this is now going to be Y2. So we having the increase from Y1 to Y2, whereas the gap between Y2 and Y3 is talking about the what do you call it now? It's talking about the crowding out effect of investment spending by an increase in government spending. How big or small it is going to be depends on the response of the IS curve to the interest rate. Okay, it's talking about this. It depends on the slope of this of the IS curves and the LM curves. So there's an increase in output. If I recall that the price level wasn't what changed, so it's government spending that increased, and that one is now increasing these outputs to Y2. So then we'll be having a shift, an outward shift of the aggregate. This is one of the aggregate demand curve. So this is it. So eventually, an increase in government spending is going to result into an outward shift of the aggregate demand curve. Okay, or in other words, an expansionary fiscal policy through the raising of government spending is going to lead to an outward shift of the aggregate demand curve. Now the same thing goes for taxes, a lowering of taxes. So if taxes are lowered, we expect that's also an expansionary fiscal policy, right? Because it increases disposable income, and then in the real world, in the real sense of things, we also have company, we also have corporate income taxes. All right, that's essentially taxing the profit of firms. So if you have these taxes coming down, if you assume that they are just a single tax rate, if you have them coming down, companies have more money to spend, households also have more disposable income to spend, and then that is through the multiplier effect, we should expect an increase in output as well. But one thing you should note, because the tax multiplier, I think we derived that in one of our videos. I'm not so sure. We talked about multiplier, but I don't know if I discussed government spending multiplier and tax multiplier. The tax multiplier is smaller than the government spending multiplier. So output is going to increase, but not as much as when there was an increase in government spending. So that is what you should note. Okay, maybe one day I'll just talk about these things, the different multipliers and their respective effects, if I've not spoken about them before. Okay, so the summary of all of this is an expansionary fiscal policy through government spending is going to lead to an outward shift of the aggregate demand curve. So now the second thing that we should look at, that I want us to look at, is the effect of an expansionary monetary policy on output. So what is that going to be? Now, when there is an expansionary monetary policy, which could occur in three different ways that I mentioned earlier: discount rates, lowering the discount rate, the what did I call it? Open market sales, and one other one that I mentioned like that. So an increase in what we are not concerned with the source of the increase in money supply. I'm just talking about an increase in money supply. Now, money supply, if you look at
Please like and subscribe.